If this goes on, don't panic. Bringing hope to the world through speculative fiction.
Hello and welcome to If This Goes On, Don't Panic. Today we have award-winning writer Premee Mohamed. Currently, it is just me and myself and I. So just a few business items before we bring on our wonderful guest. So I've had meetings with people. So like for real, we are actually getting a new website. I know I've been saying that for a long time, but really, things are happening. And the only other thing is I want to thank everybody for being very patient with me over this last year. There have been a lot of things going on in my personal life with family health and things like that. And I know things have not always been consistent. Not that I've always been super consistent, but less consistent than normal. And I appreciate everybody hanging in there. I do expect things to, unfortunately, continue in that vein in 2026, at least for the foreseeable future. But, we have no plan to stop. We're going to keep going with this thing. And we appreciate you all just hanging in there while we all deal with life events. So that all said, we are going to be bringing on Premee Mohamed when we come back. And we are back. Premee Mohamed is a Nebula, World Fantasy, Ignite, Locus, and Aurora award-winning Indo-Caribbean scientist and speculative fiction author based in Edmonton, Alberta. She has also been a finalist for the Hugo, British Fantasy, British Science Fiction, Ursula K. Le Guin, and Crawford Awards. In 2024, she was the Edmonton Public Library Writer-in-Residence, and she has taught at establishments including the Banff Institute for the Arts, Clarion, and the Carl Brandon Society. She has judged short fiction contests for CBC and Alberta Views magazine and can be found on her website at www.premeemohamed.com. And I'm going to spell that for everybody. Premeemohamed. All right. So welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, 100%. Very excited to have you on. You have been on my to get on the podcast list for like years. So I'm just excited to be able to finally do it.
Awesome. Thank you for reaching out. I also enjoy how during today's intro, you kept saying we and our as if it was not just you.
I that's just my mindset. It's
Yeah.
me and my co-hosts against the world, even if I'm the only one here today,
Yeah. No. Your co-host is there in spirit.
Exactly. So I know I'm excited to have you on. Apparently other people are also very excited to have you on. I put out a query on the internet and I had a bunch of people follow up with questions for you as well. So I think probably towards the end of the podcast, we're going to ask you some listener questions.
Sounds good.
I got to warn you that there's a lot of questions about cats. So
I am not surprised. People do not care about my writing. They are just in a parasocial relationship with my cats.
I don't know if I agree with the first part, but definitely the second part I agree with 100%. Yes. Oh my gosh. I mean, you've won so many awards. I mean, I don't even really have a written question about this, but like looking back at all of the awards that you've won, I mean, that has to be, you have to feel pretty good about that, I would guess, or like feel like that means something, right?
Yeah, that's been pretty cool. Definitely the last thing I expected when I started getting published. Again, this is like, I think this feeds directly into sort of everybody's imposter syndrome, which is, I have 2 science degrees. I have no writing degrees.
Mm-hmm.
So like I have pieces of paper saying I can do science. I have nothing saying I can write. So I was just doing it as a hobby. And then when my debut novel started getting nominated for things, I was like, what is happening? Like,
Yeah.
wow, people really just give these to anybody,
Yeah.
don't they? And that feeling has kind of not worn off. I'm just always so shocked and honored every time I'm a finalist or win something. It's just, it still blows my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine. Like, I totally get the imposter syndrome thing as well. I always feel like I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I at my job, I was literally hired to mentee people in my job. And I still, most of the time, I'm like,
Mhm.
I think actually better at this than I am. So, you know what I mean? Like, obviously, I was hired for that position for a reason, but it's like I see younger people in my profession doing just awesome things. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't know anything. Like, well, why am I even doing this?
No, same here. Every time I'm invited to like come teach something, my first response is to write back, "Oh, are you sure? Like you wouldn't rather have somebody with like a PhD or an MFA
Yeah.
or some credentials or something, because I don't have any of those, and I don't think having publishers pick up your stuff is necessarily proof that you can teach writing." But then I never write that back. I always write back, "Okay, let me know when."
Right. Yeah, you have to have that thought process and then be like, okay, now that thought process has gone through my head.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. You have to just let it kind of run through you, litany of fear or whatever. This is the litany of imposter syndrome. You just have to let it pass through you. Then it's gone. And then you can write the email.
Yeah. I'm very curious because I have not read all of your work, but I have read a section of it. You've been categorized as horror, even though I feel like a lot of your work really isn't horror. And even Beneath the Rising,
Mhm.
I mean, it obviously has a lot of horror aspects to it, especially as it goes on, it kind of becomes more horror oriented, right? But there's also science fiction aspects, there's also fantasy aspects. Did you ever expect to be, like, categorized as horror?
Not really, no. And I've talked about this particularly for those books. So I thought they would be kind of, I guess, classified and marketed as fantasy,
Mhm,
maybe dark fantasy. I wasn't sure.
mhm.
And then about 6 or 8 months before that first book was due out, my editor sent me, very excited. He sent me this link, most anticipated horror 2020. And I was like, are we sure this is horror? And he's like, yeah, it's cosmic horror. That's what you wrote. Like there's actual references to, the various evil pantheons of cosmic horror. I'm like, yeah, but just because you reference them doesn't make it a horror novel. And I think his response was something very much like, oh, too late. So all three of those ended up classed as horror. I saw The Annual Migration of Clouds, which is a science fiction, possibly bordering, eco-fiction, that
Mhm.
ended up on some horror lists.
Really?
Yeah. And every time I'm like, do people just kind of throw a dart at a dartboard and do this? Because I don't really read a lot of horror. It's very scary, as you may have noticed. I don't really consume a lot of horror media, like movies or TV shows or video games. So I feel like if I am getting classed at horror, that's, again, hey, I'm the
Yeah.
imposter in the group, guys. Sorry. I'm not in charge of where the books end up.
Beneath the Rising, that series, like, I can kind of see it, especially as it goes on, but, like, Annual Migration of Clouds, I mean, is it depressing? Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's got, like, a very, like, sad tone to it, right? Like, a very, like, downbeat tone to it for sure, but gosh, I would yeah, science fiction, maybe a kind of dystopia type of thing, you know what I mean? I would never, ever have called that horror.
Yeah, me
I
neither.
don't think there's anything horror in it at all.
Yeah, not any of the three books. They keep ending up classed as Canadian horror. Anyways, whatever. As long as people keep buying them.
Wow. Wild, wild. Well, I was curious about that because, horror is kind of having a moment right now, but historically, horror has been, considered bottom of the barrel even for speculative fiction. Like, do you feel like being called horror has affected your career at all?
No, I don't think so. And I would also ask, kind of who is doing the considering.
Yeah, sure.
Literary snobs, do we need to take their opinions into account? These are the people who won't read science fiction or fantasy anyway because they think it's all pulp and it's badly written and doesn't have any literary merit to it. So, of course, they think the same thing about horror.
Sure.
I've never really hung out with a community that does look down on horror. I have a lot of friends who write horror, legitimately, not just like me with my books ending up getting shelved there. People who study horror, people who write books about horror movies, horror books. I hope having a moment because people understand that literary merit comes in every form and every genre, and there are bad books in every form and every genre. There's a lot of really, really good horror out there. And I think similarly to science fiction and fantasy, there is a horror book for everyone. Maybe they haven't found it yet, so they still look down on the genre, but there is one. There absolutely 100% is.
Yeah. Yeah. So growing up, like this stuff, I don't know, maybe I was just aloof or something, but I never ran into any of this kind of stuff. I didn't even really know it was a thing until I got older, and maybe around college probably. But it does blow my mind that people have like these like categories of like what's more legitimate and what's not legitimate. I mean, if it wasn't for Stephen King, like I would probably not be a speculative fiction fan. Definitely not the speculative fiction fan I am today. You know, I'm also very curious, like what these snobbish people, like how they feel about Stephen King. I mean, how could I say this? Like, there are fewer writers more influential in our time than Stephen King. I mean, I would dare someone to name somebody who's more influential, a modern writer who's more influential than Stephen King.
No, absolutely. And I guess I would be curious to hear that as well. But I don't know, probably the critics that we are thinking of, these kind of straw man critics, believe that because he sells so many books, he is appealing to the mainstream on purpose, to the lowest common denominator rather than the universal. So probably his stuff is just, meant for people of average taste, average intelligence. Whereas they, the chosen ones, are trying to read books that are meant for people of above average taste, above average intelligence.
Mhm.
I really haven't seen a lot of scholarship about it, but Stephen King influenced me a lot too. I haven't read all of his stuff. I mean, and also he puts out like 13 books a year or something.
Oh dear
But,
God, I know,
you
right?
know, I did, I've read probably 8 or 10 of his novels, and I've read his horror novels, straight up horror. And I've read the Dark Tower series, which of course is fantasy slash sci-fi slash horror,
Mhm.
probably slash some other stuff too. Good God. Really, really influential on me. So I don't think it's necessarily the quote quality unquote of writing or books that is influencing future authors. I think it's the emotional connection that forms that influence and that inspiration. It's I want to write books that will make people feel things as strongly as this book that I am reading right now by Stephen King.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, gosh, I think you do a good job personally. Just from my perspective, I know
Oh, thank you.
honestly, Annual Migration of Clouds was a little tough for me to get through, to be honest with you, just because not because it was a hard read or I thought it was bad or anything. It was just like it just has this like oppressiveness about it. You know what I mean? Just this, and I know that's not all of your writing. Beneath the Rising, even though there has more horror elements than Migration of Clouds, like it's there's definitely like some very like happy-go-lucky kind of humorous moments in it, right?
Yeah, that one definitely. I mean, of course, and that one was written when I was like 20,
Oh,
and it did not get a
really?
lot of editing before it went to press. So having to write the sequel like 18 years later, I was like, I don't know if I can recapture sort of the voice and the vibes. So of course, the sequel is a very, very different book.
Mhm.
And then the third book is very, very different again because I didn't know there was going to be a third book. But yeah, that first book was really meant to be kind of a fantasy adventure. So it's got kind of, it's got like the adventure story vibes as well, like two best
Yeah.
friends, you know, bickering and like picking on each other and like doing slap fights as they try to save the world.
Yeah. I thought that was really enjoyable, actually. I think, I guess I'm kind of circling back to our discussion of horror right now, but I feel like horror is really opened up to this place where writers are able to do things that a lot of other genres right now, don't allow. Like there are subgenres right now that are just very like ultra surreal. Like I don't know if you're familiar with Bizarro stuff. A good buddy of mine, he writes what they would call bizarro, right? Just completely, it's
Mhm.
like like a horror cartoon sort of, you know what I mean? It's hard to define. I always have a different definition for it every time I talk about it. Like there's all these different kinds of subgenres, right? There's like the psycho killer, there's like varying versions of the surreal stuff. There's the cosmic horror, right? There's the more Stephen King kind of stuff, There's
Mhm.
one thing that jumped out to me lately is this idea of like adventure horror, I want to call it. I've never heard anybody talk about it before, but it does seem like there's this like maybe subgenre of horror happening where it's like, main characters go on an adventure, but on that adventure, there's also, vampires murdering everybody, or you know what I mean? Like kind of like if you took maybe D&D is not the best example, but it's probably the most popular example, like we're going on this crazy adventure, but it's like over that edge of like, oh wait, everybody's being murdered,
Yeah.
and horribly, you know what I mean?
Well, I think that's discussed really well in Tim Waggoner's book, Writing in the Dark. I don't know if
Oh,
you've read that one,
no.
but it's a craft book and it's full of great exercises. In fact, my understanding is, I think either this year or last year, because that book was so popular, he also put out a book just of exercises. I really wish I had read that book earlier in my career, but I don't think it existed earlier in my career. I can't remember when it came out. Anyways, Writing in the Dark, it's very good. But Tim Waggoner kind of goes through and he kind of breaks down, like we were talking about, lots of those subgenres, like
Mm,
what makes X more this type of horror than that type of horror. And
mhm,
a lot of it is kind of hitting the expected tropes of the subgenre while also keeping the expected kind of structure of horror. And the expected structure of horror differs from strictly sort of adventure because horror is expected to always be tragic and adventure can be heroic or comedic. So if you mix those, you kind of have to be aware that you're not going to end up with something that's going to satisfy maybe traditional horror fans who are like, I am here for the scares and I am here for the hero to not be, heroic. I'm not necessarily here for the hero to defeat the monster or to win, because in a lot of horror movies, that doesn't happen. Everybody dies at the end. The bad guy wins or seems to win. Even if they're defeated, there often is kind of that traditional double ending where, oh, oops, you thought they were dead, they're not dead, or you thought they were gone, they're not gone. There's usually a hint that whatever the evil was, that can never really be defeated. So all we can really do is, try to survive in the face of it, try to keep our family and friends safe in the face of it, say, or try to get through it without, becoming so degenerate that we become the villains ourselves. And so in a horror, regardless of kind of the subgenre, all those elements are kind of expected. The hero is never elevated. The hero is always, at best, the main character, not the hero. And all they can do is kind of slide down this blood slippery slope, usually, to an ending where they have to decide what they will give up in order to live or in order to remain human. So I think when that's combined with other more kind of optimistic or plot driven genres, the effect may satisfy people who are looking for kind of the other genre, like the adventure readers. But for the real hardcore kind of horror fans, they're going to be like, this has some scary moments, but this is not necessarily horror. So really, that's what I was going for in that first book. So I didn't think I was writing a horror book. I thought I was writing an adventure
mhm.
story with some fantasy elements like gods and monsters and magic and some scary moments for the main characters.
Oh, yeah. Why do you feel that horror is having the moment that it's having right now? And how did such things, I don't know, become acceptable, I guess, because I feel like when I was growing up in the 90s, if you had said, oh, here's this book that falls in the horror category, but also it's got like slapstick comedy in it, like that would not have been okay, right?
I'm not sure. I don't know. Like, I think there were a lot of like really funny over the top horror books, you know, through the 70s, 80s, 90s. You can often tell because the covers will kind of let you know that there's something extremely goofy or deliberately pulpy or over the top about it. You know, without having access to things like sales data, I'm not sure, but I think there is so much good horror being written out there that there is so much variety now, arguably, in the types of people that are writing horror, which isn't to say that, you know, previously horror was written entirely by middle-aged white men.
Yeah.
But when you look at kind of the horror bestsellers, you know, for like the 80s and 90s and beyond, a lot of it does look like that. It's a couple of big names like Dean Koontz and Stephen
Yes.
King kind of monopolizing the entire list. So my sense is that with more variety, audiences are finding more things that they can try out and like and see if there's something there that kind of appeals to them more than reading, you know, kind of the very samey kind of horror written by people who write exclusively horror books and write a lot of them that we used to see. So I think with the expansion of the horror ecosystem, you know, inviting more people in, inviting emerging authors in, inviting people of different backgrounds and ethnicities and genders and disabilities and, you know, neurodiversities, you get horror that kind of builds out from that very, very small subset of potential horror subgenres and plots, I think.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, no, I could totally see that. I could totally see that. You need to come to the StokerCon one of these days. Rumor is it's going to be in Pittsburgh. Well, it's definitely going to be in Pittsburgh in 2026, but I hear that it may be in Pittsburgh frequently. So
I hear that in order to cross the border, people are going to have to give biometric data over to border services.
I just read that the other day. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, don't
maybe I will just stay here in Canada for a little bit.
Yeah. Definitely stay in Canada until that insanity is over, because that's ridiculous. Yeah. I would not want anyone to subject themselves to that.
Yeah.
I just read that, gosh, I don't know, maybe this morning or something.
I just read that, I think, yesterday or the day before yesterday.
Yeah.
And I think supposedly Canada is supposed to be excluded, but also try being a brown woman with a Muslim last name and arguing that we don't need to give certain types of data or get certain types of visas to do that. I don't think they're going to like that. So
No, because they are arresting white women. So yeah.
That is a very, very specific type of horror. That is border horror.
Gosh, right? After these last couple of years, that might become a thing.
It probably is, even if we haven't heard about the books yet. Yep.
Yeah. Seriously. It's real life horror, whether it's written down or not. That's for certain. I want to go back to humor for a second, because humor is always an interesting thing to me. Your work, and I know that you said there was 20 years between Beneath the Rising, the first one, and the second one, but your second one still has funny moments in it. It still has some slapstick to it, and I mean, let's be honest, Premee, you are known to be pretty funny on the internet too.
Oh,
you are.
Again, a lot of that I think is possibly like the surrealism of just life generally. So I'm often like riffing off stuff that strikes me as funny because my thinking is almost like, I'm not funny. The world did it first.
I'm curious because your books do a good job of juggling like very serious themes and then being pretty funny, right? So like, when is the right time to deploy humor when writing?
Tough call. I mean, for me, it's natural to put it in practically everything I write. And I think I would be hard pressed to think of a book of mine that doesn't have people at least trying to make each other laugh at some point, or trying to be funny at some point, or finding a situation funny at some point, partly because I think that's human nature. That's what we do. Is I have never encountered a situation so dark that I or someone near me did not joke about it. And, we may have felt horrible afterwards, but it's human nature. There's no way I think we can stop ourselves from doing it. So to try to deliberately leave that out of a book, I think would actually damage the narrative. And that would feel really, really false. And I think it would actually also strike a reader as weird and false to not have some kind of humor in there somewhere. But it also has kind of another narrative use, which is if the tension has been ratcheting up, your choices are you can kind of keep that going and release it with, some kind of conflict, violence, a fight or a surprise or a twist or, I don't know, like a betrayal or some new information or something like that. Or you can ratchet it down by having somebody laugh. And then the reader generally kind of feels that lack of tension there as well and goes, oh, haha, yeah, good one. Then if the next scene is something horrifying or surprising or the twist or the fight or the jump scare, that hits a little bit harder because at that point you're not expecting it necessarily. And you'll see that even in like, I wouldn't call Jaws a horror movie. I would call it a thriller, but you see it a lot in horror and thrillers. When you kind of look at the narrative setup, is there's either going to be a false scare or there's going to be a joke right before the big scare. Because that tension level, it's kind of up to you. It's like you've got a guitar string. You're the one who decides how tight to turn it, So if you want to like really let it slacken by having people laugh about, oh, haha, good thing we got away from that horrible killer clown. Yeah, he would have gotten grease paint on my fancy outfit, something like that. Haha, that is a perfect time for the killer clown to jump out of the bushes,
Right. I love that answer. One thing that definitely, along with humor, one thing that definitely ties the books that I've read together is you definitely have this penchant for these duos of characters, right? For example, you've got Johnny and I'm forgetting the other character's name.
Nick.
And Beneath the Rising. Nick, yes.
Yeah.
And then in the Annual Migration of Clouds, you've got the two main characters, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have kind of a similar dynamic in a lot of ways. They've known each other their whole lives, right? They're kind of going on this adventure sort of together, you know what I mean? One person's messing up and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of explore these close relationships, right? What makes a relationship between characters like this realistic?
Oh, tough question. We actually were just talking about that at CanCon, weirdly enough. There was a panel about friendships in fiction, like long-term friendships in fiction. And how do you set up a long-term friendship in a book and not have it be kind of just like completely stultifying to the entire narrative? Like, how do you not have it be static or kind of dead? How do you have a friendship or the interaction between two people be kind of the story engine that pushes the plot forward? And it was myself and Claudie Arsenault, who actually has edited, I believe, 2 anthologies of fiction basically about this, and Gregory Wilson. And I was thinking about this so much afterwards because, a lot of my books turn on either a long-term friendship between people that pushes the book forward or a like new-ish relationship between two people that pushes the book forward. And I think it's because there is always that inherent tension between people who are very, very different. And it feels like a waste of a character if you create two friends who have been friends for so long that they've become very similar. And I was thinking this too. So this past year, my best friend from since I was 11, so we've been friends for like 30 something years now. He and his husband came to visit in August, and we spent like a week together. They slept over at the house. We watched movies, we made popcorn, we played with the cats. It was like being kids again. And his husband was like, I finally understand like where so many of his mannerisms come from, like the things he says, even like in some cases, like the way he'll tell a story or like the language he'll use with something, it came from you. I'm like, no, it came from us being friends for 30 years. We've we've changed each other a lot. Even that in a book can push the story forward, because then you have the chance of people growing apart. You have the option of someone wanting to do something that the other person doesn't want to do. For instance, in the Annual Migration of Clouds, Reed is talking about leaving their community. That is not something that ever happens. And it's not something Henrik is considering. He's slightly horrified. He's like, well, I want to be happy for you. But, so their friendship at the end is kind of, spoiler alert, it's sundered. They're split apart. In Beneath the Rising, the truth about Johnny splits her and Nick apart. In the second book, he's very, very angry at the betrayal, and he should be. They're forced together again, and then he's upset about the coercion, basically. He's like, if I could get out of this, I would. This isn't how a friendship is supposed to go. I don't know how to feel about you anymore. And what can we offer you tonight? The narrator, Jewel, has to consider how deep her friendship is to the people in her life. Are they casual acquaintances? Are there people that she's going to take a bullet for? Are they people that she's going to risk things for or not? That's kind of a big choice for her. And, as an author, we're like, well, that's an easy one. You have to do what I tell you to do. But to make it feel naturalistic, we have to look at the stakes in terms of not just what do they lose by starting or ending or continuing a friendship, but also what do they gain? So it's kind of a constellation of people's need for each other, their need to be social, and the external influences of the story, pushing them together or pushing them apart, giving them opportunities to become closer, or to tell the truth to one another, or to betray each other, or to break up, or to reunite, or to fall on different sides of a conflict or a battle. There's just so much that goes into making these relationships feel real and not making one person just be kind of, because I hate it when I see this in books, and this is deliberate too. Like, people are supposed to be old friends, quote unquote, but then the old friend appears on the scene, delivers a chunk of exposition, and then leaves again. And I'm like, that is not how friends work. So you could have made that person a stranger. If you're going to make them a friend, use the friendship. I don't like wasting characters. I like giving them a job in the plot.
Yeah. And for somebody who has a terrible time remembering names, those extra characters, man, they kill me. I'm kind of making a joke, but no, that makes a lot of sense to me. That's very interesting.
Well, and I also tend to think, whenever questions like this come up, I'm like, who has ever heard of a book that only had one character anyway? You're always dealing with relationships.
Right.
I cannot think of anything more boring than a story or book that just has a single character that does not connect to anybody else, talk to anybody else. I mean, what do you do with the dialogue? Like, you could probably do it in flash fiction. I would not want to read a novel with just a single character moving heroically through the world.
Yeah, you'd have to pull like a Jeff Vandermeer where the lamp is talking to you and the bush is talking to you, and like
bush is talking to you, or like a To Build a Fire or something where it's just the one guy. But even then, I think there's like some remembered dialogue where somebody was like, "Don't go out there, you'll have to build a fire," or something like that. I may be misremembering this story slightly.
I can't even remember when I read that. That was a long time ago, though.
Me too. I think it was like grade 6.
Yeah, probably somewhere around there. Yeah, I remember the cover.
Yeah.
It's funny having a kid who's in middle school because they're finally being assigned books to read and stuff. He brings it back and I'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that book.
Oh man, are they still getting kids to read that? Oh man, I remember that. Yeah. I am definitely seeing that. 2 weeks ago, I gave a talk at a local high school, and I was literally shocked that one of the teachers for one of the classes that I spoke to had assigned one of my books to read. I was like, oh my God, are you guys not reading stuff from like the 80s? Like we were? Like, oh man, thank you for forcing the kids to read my book.
That's fine. Which book?
The Butcher of the Forest, which I thought was a really weird choice. Because again, it's a fairy tale fantasy not set in any particular place or time, which I feel like when I was in high school was like half the stuff that we had to do for the books. Like, I think we did The Great Gatsby in like grade 11 or something.
yeah.
And we had to look up information about like the 1920s and the economic crash and like, the Great War and stuff like that. And so for them to assign a strictly fantasy novel kind of blew my mind. Sorry, novella, not novel. The Butcher of the Forest is a novella.
It is funny. They're a lot more flexible about those types of things these days than they used to be. I know.
They seem to be.
Yeah, they really are. He had to read a book about, well, I guess it had to take place in a certain time, okay, and a certain place, like you're saying. So it had to happen in a real life place, but it could be like anything out of this whole selection. And he chose a book that was, I can't remember the name of it, but that seems to be the theme of this podcast. I can't remember the name of anything today.
We'll get it in edits.
Right. But it was like, it took place during the plague, you know what I mean? But it had fantasy elements, like the one guy was able to cure the plague.
Oh man, we extremely were not allowed to pick. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was very surprised. I'm like, oh, so you just got to pick this book and read it? He's like, yeah. I was like, dang, man.
Oh my God, that blows my mind. Yeah, I'm like, oh, kids these days, we were allowed to pick back in my day, and then I'd like start waving my cane around or whatever. I don't know. It's
right.
There truly is nothing like talking to a room full of like 120 high schoolers to really, really make you feel insanely old.
Yes. I know exactly what you mean. Whenever I want to make myself feel old, I'll tell the kids, I remember before the internet. And they're like, what?
Yeah, I almost told a pre-internet story there, but I also thought it was fun. So I recently was invited to a literary festival in France. So that was super fun.
Oh, cool.
They had a festival bookstore where a whole bunch of booksellers kind of got together and crammed into like one of the biggest rooms to sell the books. And so they had signing tables, and quite a few people in my signing line who had loved The Butcher of the Forest said that they thought it was set in like medieval France. And I was like, you know what? Sure. Because I didn't put a country, and it isn't a real place. And as far as I know, unicorns never lived in medieval France. But you know what? If it makes you happy to think that it was France, thank you for buying the book. Here, I will sign it for you.
That's awesome.
They were all super, super nice and very enthusiastic. Not all of my books have been translated into French, just 4 of them, but Butcher happened to be one of them. And a lot of French people were like, yeah, thanks for setting the book in France.
That's funny. Funny how people...
It was funny.
People just read into things, they read in whatever they want to read in, right?
They truly do. Like, it was funny the first time it happened, and then it kept happening, and I was like, maybe I should go back and reread this, or, maybe the translator put something in there. I don't know.
We had Terry Turtledove on here once, and I asked him, like, how do you convey the message that you were trying to convey, especially if it's like a political or social message, right? And continue to keep people understanding that that's your message. And he was like, basically, it's impossible. He said,
you can't. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember the name. His biggest book, right? It's got like some guy from the Confederate with machine guns on the front, right? Like he said, after that got published, he got invited to this conference, and he went, but it was like some kind of like black tie affair. So he went, and it ended up being like this pro-Confederate thing that he didn't know.
Oh my God.
And then he's like, and they're like,
I can absolutely see that happening though. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, did no one like read the book? Because this is very anti all of this. Like, what is happening?
Yeah. This also came up at the high school talk. It was like, you almost cannot, while you're writing, like you almost cannot think of the reader reception to the book, because again, I've had 13 books published. By this point, I have finally realized I'm not in control of that. Readers are literally going to see whatever they want to see in the book, whether that has anything to do with the text that I put on the page. These days, I'm starting to wonder if there isn't always a correlation. I've definitely gotten messages from people who did not seem to pick up what I was putting down. So they're out there. So I think the best thing to do is just kind of release the book into the wild, like a radio collared wolf, and be like, go live your life. I'll check up on you now and then, but I'm not going to tell you what to hunt.
Yeah, that's so interesting. When I was reading Beneath the Rising, you have this character, Johnny, right? We've kind of discussed Johnny lightly before, but
Mhm.
it struck me that Johnny is kind of a deconstruction of the classic SF trope of a hero who can do anything and everything, right? Because she does do anything and everything, but it's like, well,
Oh,
first of
yeah.
all, it's absurd, right? Like you go back to Heinlein or something like that,
Yep.
and it's just like, oh yeah, of course he could do it. He's like the guy, right?
Yeah. This was definitely intended to be a case of, oh, look at this Mary Sue. She's good at everything.
Yeah.
She's rich. She's pretty. She has, she has all the privileges of being white
Mhm.
and having money and living in this big house and having help and blah, blah, blah. The way, of course, that gets flipped is when you find out why she's got all this stuff and is able to do all this stuff. And yeah, even at the time, because that was written in like 2002, that was very much a deconstruction of like the tech bro prodigy, trying to say, hey, I'm here to save the world. I am a superhero. Don't look into my past. I don't think that's important because, of course, to be someone like that, you have to cheat. And in this case, the cheating
Yeah.
puts the entire world in peril. So I really enjoyed kind of creating her in order to destroy her, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And that's why Nick is the POV character. Because if she was telling the story, we would have a very different book.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's so interesting. I'm glad that you did that too. I mean, well, for various reasons, but I never understood the fascination with characters who can just do everything. Like,
Yeah.
to me, it's just boring, you know? It's just boring.
I enjoy the fascination with characters who are good at like one thing, provided that we understand that
Mhm.
they are only good at that one thing and they're bad at everything else. Like there are definitely moments in Sherlock Holmes stories where I'm like, oh, fuck off, like,
Right.
oh, all of a sudden it's revealed in this story that he can do X. He learned it from a monk in the Himalayas when he was blah, blah, blah. It gets a little bit wearying to have someone suddenly reveal that they are good at everything. But
Yes.
I do think there is a genuine love for people who are hyper competent at one really cool thing. And we like to read stories about that. So in this case, I actually wanted, for people to be kind of, hey, isn't it kind of suspicious that she is good at everything?
Yeah.
Every type of science, every type of language, she does martial arts. Really? She's like 5 feet tall. Somewhere in the distance, I just heard her yell, 5'1". Okay, I'm sorry, honey.
Hey, wait. Stop right there for a second. I want to tell you, my martial arts instructor, she's like 5'2", and she has punched me before, and it hurts, okay? She is no joke.
I think that's mentioned possibly in the second book, the Johnny Chambers rule of combat. It's if someone's bigger than you, they're stronger than you, but if they're smaller than you, they bite.
Yes.
So don't discount people that are quite small.
No, and you would never know.
And it applies to like every type of creature too. So
Right? Yes, and my karate instructor too is also very like, she's very feminine, you know what I mean? So you would never know until she, whooped your ass, that she was.
And so again, that was another like, oh, of course Johnny's good at like kung fu or whatever. Ha ha. Oh, she's like Neo from the Matrix at this point. Yeah. And then you find out what she had to trade to get that. And you're like, oh, you little shit. Like, so all 3 books are about exploring what to do when you have a little shit on your hands and you think you've killed her, but you haven't killed her enough.
Yeah. The funny thing about that is I still kind of like want them to work out some way, but it's like twisted though, you know what I mean? It's like,
I heard that from people.
it's like, I do want it to work out, but she's awful, but
I want them to be friends someday again. Yeah, but she is awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the best they can hope for is like, again, like we were talking about friendships, maybe at the end, the best you can do is, well, we're acquaintances now, and you're never going to be allowed to get closer to me than that. So, maybe in the future we'll see, but you have to earn your way back up the friendship ladder after everything that we've seen.
Yeah. You work across a variety of lengths, right?
Mhm.
Some authors really are focused on like, I only write door stoppers, or I only write short stories. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
how do you handle the difference between these two different lengths of story?
I guess I would ask what you mean by like handle. I mean, they're getting written.
I guess I would say, how do you plot them differently? And yeah, let's go with that. Well, how do you plot them differently?
It depends, I guess. For almost all my stuff, I am starting with, again, unless I'm being forced to write a sequel, for almost all my stuff, I'm starting with an idea, and I'm kind of going by vibes as to whether I feel like that idea is a novel, a novella, or a short story. I don't really have that problem where, I was writing a short story and it floofed up into a novella. I kind of don't have that anymore, which thank God.
Mm-hmm.
But that took, decades of calibration and learning kind of my own process and how I work. Generally, when I start writing something now, I know exactly how long it will be when it's done, because the idea itself tends to tell me how long it will be. I did a guest blog post about that this year for the Brockton Writers Series. It's called, Does This Idea Have Legs? If so, how long are they? So, but it's basically discussing like, if you have a novel idea that requires, say, a large cast of characters, many scenes or settings, maybe a longer time period, you sort of know it's a novel. When you have an idea that's sort of one main idea and at most one subplot, and it's sort of a smaller group of characters, and you just follow them for the entire book, to me that feels like a novella.
Mm-hmm.
Short stories, you kind of know when you have a short story idea. I like writing at the novel and novella length. Most of my trunked stuff is novel length, and a huge amount of it is like twice as long as the Beneath the Rising novels.
Oh, okay.
Because I used to be quite bad at like finishing things. I am better now. But yeah, a lot of stuff that I would like start and then abandon was novels, because I just wanted to, explore more. Hey, let's move the characters here and have them do something here. Hey, let's let them, explore this idea. Let's let them have a conflict about this new thing that I just thought of. So they would just get longer and longer, but they wouldn't end. I kind of like the purity of a novella, where you are just telling a story in slightly more depth than a short story, but not as much as a novel. And to me, I feel like the novella works best when the full length of it is kind of given the same treatment, and none of it feels sort of shortchanged for length or fluffed up for length. And that's something that's sort of hard to articulate. I've sort of done it in my head by comparing some of my stuff to other novellas that I've liked or that I felt slightly short. In some novellas, there will be parts where it's like, oh wow, this almost reads like you snip this out of the outline. Compared to what came before it and after it, this doesn't feel like you're summarizing something. This feels like you're skipping something. So maybe this was skipped to keep this at the novella length.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you had given it the same level of length and care and attention and detail as what came before and what came after, you would have added enough words onto it to make it, a short novel. And if you didn't want to do that, that's where I felt like that felt short. Or in other novellas where I'm like, your actual list of things that happen in this novella is so slight. This could have been about a 5,000 word short story.
Mm-hmm.
You clearly felt you had to fluff it up, but the fluffing is visible. So if I can see it, I don't like that. So with my stuff, I am trying to do justice to the story from the start to the finish. That's kind of how I know I have a novella. Again, I'm sure my agent would be happier if I worked more on novel projects and stopped sort of throwing novellas at him randomly. But sometimes I just write one and then I give it to him and I'm like, can you please sell this? Because, as you know, there are fewer real kind of novella markets, and they don't pay as well as novels, and they shouldn't, because they don't generally sell as well as novels. So
yeah.
And, just in terms of the economics of printing them and everything, you're better off trying to place a novel with a publisher than you are a novella. But I think it's a cool length. And I think it's becoming more popular as readers outside of kind of the sci-fi and fantasy and horror space realize, hey, there are actually these little books in this category called novella, and I can look for it at my bookseller. it's kind of hard to find because books obviously aren't arranged by length on like online venues or things like that. You can't go to Amazon and be like, where is a list of novellas? You know, you might find a few.
Yeah.
They won't necessarily be labeled as a novella, but I think as they get more popular, that problem will begin to be reduced. And of course, in person, you can see how short the book is. So I'm not going to stop writing them. Sorry, Michael. That's my agent.
I'm a huge lover of the novella length, actually. That's my favorite length.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm ecstatic that they're becoming more popular, you know?
Me too. Yeah, they're a cool length. And actually, you know, when you look at it, like a lot of the books from sort of like the 50s, 60s, 70s that we think of as, oh, that's a very famous sci-fi novel, or that's a very famous fantasy novel. When you actually look at them, those are novellas. Mm-hmm. We aren't aware that they're novellas because we think of them as a novel. Like Brave New World is a novella. That's actually not a novel. It's less than 40,000 words. So
I did not know that.
Yeah, when you pick up a lot of those older books, you're like, hey, this is quite thin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not Moby Dick, everybody. That actually is very long for real.
Yeah, that one for real actually is not a novella.
No. Very long. All right, we don't usually do this, but with some authors who I know that are more popular online and stuff, every now and then I will like just go online and be like, hey, does anybody have any questions for so-and-so? Because we're going to interview them soon. And recently I saw you had posted a story about being placed at a signing table by TJ Klune, right?
Oh yeah, that was in 2022. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And being sad that he had so many people coming up to get book signed and stuff. And
not really sad. No, I mean I completely expected it. Him and Scalzi. Sorry, them and Scalzi. But I was a little bit like, why would you guys do this to me? Like, could you not have split up our signings so that I didn't have to look so bored and pathetic for like the 45-minute shift where I sign 0 books and have to sit there goofing off on my phone? Like I wasn't expecting, it was, again, I didn't even have all that many books published. I was like, I am a nobody. I'm not expecting anyone to come to my table, but I think it would have looked better if I hadn't been put next to TJ.
Yeah. When we had TJ on, I asked people if there were questions. I got one person who asked the question and nobody else. So you have more questions than TJ Klune.
Okay, that surprises me. Well, I don't think TJ is very like active on social media either, though. So like, if you ask the question, like,
I don't actually know, to be honest with you. I think he's on like Instagram or something.
Yeah, I think they're on Instagram or something, but that might be it. And not even all that active, possibly. But yeah, I don't know. They were extremely nice. We all went out for like coffee afterwards to one of the little coffee shops there in Halifax and like hung out with some of their friends and got like snacks and pastry. And it was really nice. I don't know.
Yeah. TJ is an awesome person. Like we talked about the X-Files for like, I don't know, like 20 minutes when he came on here.
I love it.
It was great. I love it too. Well, my whole point being that you got more questions than TJ Klune on here, so I was just hoping that would make you feel a little bit better about the whole situation.
Oh, come on. No one, I never expect people to come to my signing lines. I was shocked that like anybody showed up in France.
Really? I am surprised. I am legitimately surprised by that. Legitimately.
Well, I think I can tell from my royalty statements that people aren't really buying the books. So I'm like, why would you show up at like a signing thing for someone who doesn't really sell books? It does not make any sense.
Huh.
So
I don't know. Maybe I guess they're just too involved in the sci-fi community or something. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't
know. Again, I think this is more proof, though, that like your social media followers don't actually correlate to anything. And that includes sales. So if people are maybe listening to this and freaking out like, oh, I'm never going to get signed for a novel because I only have like 1,500 people on social media. I had like nobody when I got my first book deal, and that was a 2-book deal. So don't worry about it, because publishers are aware that not everybody who follows you is going to buy your book. And in some cases, practically nobody who follows you will buy your book.
There you go, I guess. There you go.
Word to the wise.
Word to the wise. I had no idea. Well, anyway, we got a ton of questions for you. So maybe if we want to do these in a more rapid fire way, that might make more sense for you.
Sure. I was about to say, oh, we got a ton of questions. Yeah, how many of them are about my books and how many of them are about the cats?
Oh, I'd say 50-50, you know.
Okay. That makes me slightly more hopeful for humankind.
Okay, so first question. What does it mean to be a writer in residence at a public library?
It depends. So at this library here, the Edmonton Public Library, basically you get a little office at the library. So I thought that was really cool.
Oh,
You get your
cool.
own little office, and the expectation is you'll spend about half your time working on your own stuff. So that was really cool. For me, that ended up being about 10% of the time, but whatever. The expectation is you'll be spending about half your time working on your own stuff. So the project that you applied with, in my case, a novel, and about half the time doing library stuff. So I think that probably varies a lot from library to library, from program to program. For us here at the Edmonton Public Library, that means working on library programming. So putting on, in my case, webinars, because we weren't doing stuff really in person because germs. So like, for instance, I invited my friend Matt Wallace on to do a program, and we talked about writing middle grade books, which is something that I did not know a lot about. I invited agent Becky Lejeune on to talk about kind of the agent author relationship and talk about querying and pitching and how to get an agent. I invited a couple of, local-ish friends to talk about local publishing and nonfiction, because one of them had written, kind of a hybrid memoir, and one of them had written about her farm, like a nonfiction book about her farm. So that was really cool. And also evaluating people's manuscripts. They can just send you stuff up to a certain word length, and then meeting with them to talk about it, or just meeting with people who just kind of want to come and talk to a writer. So I got a lot of people coming in to be kind of like, hey, I have a problem with this short story. Can you help me sort of untie the knot? People coming in like, hey, I got all these journal entries from my grandma in the late 1800s, or, great grandma in the late 1800s, and I'd like to turn them into biography of her. How do I do that? Or stuff like, hey, I finished my book. How can I start the process of trying to get that traditionally published? So that's kind of what that involved. Oh, and also one really fun thing, the library last year restarted their briefly, I think 2 or 3 year defunct bookbinding program. So they used me as one of the guinea pigs and asked me if I could recruit some of my emerging writers to use as guinea pigs too, and kind of train people on the new equipment to be like, hey, if you've got a manuscript, come bind your book. So I did a book of my sci-fi short stories, and that was really, really fun as well. Like learning how to use the equipment and kind of like coming up with a photo for the cover. And yeah, it was really fun.
That sounds super fun. What a great job.
It was amazing. It was like the coolest year. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. I don't write, but I want that job anyway. That sounds super fun.
Minor issue there, but
I'll figure it out. No.
yeah.
So another question. So you mentioned Butcher of the Forest before. There have been questions around, do you plan to write any more in the world of Butcher of the Forest?
I would like to, but until the publisher asks me to, I basically can't. I'm on contract for too many other things. So the answer for now is sadly no. If you would really like a sequel, though, you could probably write to Tor.com and be like, hey. Okay, obviously, unfortunately, since this is a podcast, nobody can see my extremely coquettish gesture, but just trust that it was there.
I love it.
But basically, that's how the sequels to the Annual Migration of Clouds came about, was literally, my editor told me, like, people both inside and outside the publisher were kind of nudging her to be like, hey, what happens next? And she was like, I don't know. We only contracted the one book. So.
Yeah. That puts a whole new spin on it.
It was extremely meant to be a standalone. I was actually anti-sequel.
Really?
I wanted the ending to be as ambiguous and open as possible, because that was the whole point for me. It was like, you can imagine anything you want. Like, the sky's the limit. I'm trying to encourage people to use their imagination. And then my editor was like, can we have 2 more books? And I was like, God dang it.
Damn it. That defeats the whole purpose.
It defeats the whole purpose. Yeah, she literally had to talk me into it. Thanks, Jan.
That's so interesting. I did not know that. Huh. Whole new spin on the book now for me. That's interesting. Okay. 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 So you mentioned middle grade. One of the questions was, have you written a children's book? If not, would you ever consider writing a horror book for children?
I think that would be super fun. Actually, Matt and I have talked about like collaborating on one, but we're both so overscheduled.
Yeah.
No, I've never written for children, but particularly a kids horror book, I think would be the most fun thing in the world ever to write. So again, if a publisher is listening to this, please let me. I have ideas.
I mean, I personally think that would be awesome. My youngest son is really into horror, and so we read. I've been reading a lot of like, I don't know if you consider the middle grade, so somewhere around Goosebumps level, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's like, yeah, middle grade verging on YA, I think. But definitely when I remember those, like from a kid point of view, I think those were like age appropriate to like, 10, 11, something like that.
Yeah.
And oh my God, they were so fun. Like,
I mean, oh no, he loves them. He loves them. But as a more experienced writer, I'm like,
yeah, like as an adult, we're like, eh. But yeah, I remember as a kid, I really liked those. And my school library never seemed to have enough.
well, I was gonna say that they're kind of hard to find, to be honest, at least around
Yeah.
here. Like they're either written at a middle grade level and are really long, which doesn't work for him, or they're
Mhm. Yeah.
or they're Goosebumps pretty much. There are some, but there's not a ton, and a lot of them are not like written at in my opinion, like a great quality level. You know what I mean? Like I feel like
Yeah.
there's definitely a
Yeah.
gap there that could be filled in.
That's the thing too. It's like, I hate the idea that like writing for kids is easy or that you can
Yes.
put less work into it or
Yes.
that the writing can be worse. Absolutely not. Also, kids are really, really quick to pick up on that kind of thing. Like
Yes.
they know instantly what they like and what they don't
Yes.
like, and they don't like being talked down to.
Yep.
And they can tell when a book is not meant for them or when the author hasn't really put in like the work and the passion and the excitement. Like kids are very, very sharp about that. Like never try to pull one over on a
Yes.
kid.
100%. 100%. Totally true. Anyway, so I definitely think you should think about that. That would be awesome.
Oh, no, I have been thinking about it for years. I'm just like, I would love to. I just, it hasn't happened yet, but I would love to.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay. Another question. This is much more serious grown up topic here. Okay. In the annual migration of clouds,
Is it about unicorns? Sorry.
It is not. It is not. No, this I'm telling you, this is real life stuff here. This is real life stuff. You're ready. In the annual migration of clouds, you posed the question of how supply chain collapse in lieu of natural disasters and pandemics like COVID. How do you foresee the issue in the near future, and what lessons can be learned to work around it?
Oh, tough question. I think I foresaw the supply chain collapses as working as an accelerant on the climate disasters and on the pandemic that are both in the book. So all of that basically is on the page. And the idea just comes from the fact that we really take it for granted that if we need to fix something or do something, the items and equipment that we need are going to be there to do that. But like even something as minor as welding, if you can't get access to like oxyacetylene cylinders for a little while, the amount of industries that would simply fall apart because there's no domestic capacity to manufacture those is legion.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that was coming from the place I used to work, which was a nickel and cobalt refinery slightly outside of town here in Fort Saskatchewan. And because we got ore from Cuba, among other places, but we also got some of our feedstock ore from Cuba, we weren't allowed to do business directly with companies in the States. We had to use third-party buyers who would acquire something for us, ship it to their counterpart in Canada, and then let us buy it from them, usually at a stupid markup. So just going temporarily insane every time we had to source something that was now only available in the States. I just kept thinking like, what happens if the day comes that we need something for some of this, like, frankly, kind of old and scrungly equipment from like the 80s or the 70s or whatever, and we simply cannot get it? We are going to have to either try to create something from scratch, and the likelihood of that happening is not super high, or we're going to have to literally abandon that piece of equipment and buy something else. And when you think of that small, irritating thing being multiplied worldwide, as factories have to shut down, as ships stop crossing the ocean, as people get too sick to work, or as climate disasters prevent things from leaving their shores, I think it's easy to see that everything does collapse. We saw a little bit of that in COVID, but I should point out the book was written in 2019. It was acquired in January 2020. So COVID wasn't a thing yet, and I wasn't thinking about that. It's just something I think that people in a lot of industries think about all the time anyway. And the answer to it is having more domestic capability to make and ship things. But people aren't really working on that all that much. And the just-in-time shipping is basically now understood to be the way the world works. And the problem with that is that there's no resilience in it. So like, if a chain breaks, right now we can put that back together and there's just like a brief inconvenience. If a lot of chains break, then things are out of stock in like a day. People look at these like end of the world scenarios like in, zombie movies or things like that. And the idea that you can go find something years after the disaster is hilarious because like, do people understand that even something like their local Walmart needs to get supplied every single day in order to have stock on their shelves? Those will be empty after a week. You're not going to have a Walking Dead situation where you wander into something 2 years later and are still able to find something. So, yeah, I think about it a lot. And I think if things start to go, we're going to see it in supply chains first.
Yeah. So you would recommend like people should stock up things like they used to do, right?
I don't know if I'd recommend that. I think my main recommendation right now would just be, kind of think about it and keep in mind the weak points of your life or lifestyle, which isn't to say that I think industrialized civilization is going to collapse. I don't think it is. But I think if people know about it, then they can respond a little bit quicker when kind of those early warning signs start to happen. Like in my case, I would immediately rush out and try to stock up on my asthma inhalers because I'm allowed to get 5 at a time. I would get all 5.
Oh, yeah.
If I thought that those were going to have like a supply chain pinch, I would grab those and try to figure out another solution after that. But, I would notice that happening first.
In a related way, like I stock up on my ADHD meds. Like I will not take them over the weekend sometimes so that I have extras in case that happens. Because it happened to me before. Like they just stopped stocking my med. And I was like, okay, so I guess I just am screwed now. So, okay.
Yeah, no, it's, again, yeah, some of us think about it a lot because there's kind of less resilience in our own lives to just substitute things or kind of swap things in. Again, as someone who has multiple chronic health conditions and is kind of at this point physically disabled and conditionally disabled, I really have to watch what I do and what I buy and what I keep in the house. So, I don't trust supply chains anymore, especially after the earliest days of COVID. I don't trust them anymore. I know how fragile they are.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, and there's still hiccups happening here and there too, but
there are still hiccups happening. Yeah.
Which classic science fiction location would you use as a setting in your own stories?
Oh, good question. God, I don't know. What do we mean by classic too? I would love to write like more Dune books, except there are already like a billion.
Yes.
I just think the idea of like ecosystem political fiction is there's so much still, I think, to explore on Arrakis, right? Like, I think it's the easy answer, but also you literally have an entire economy based on sandworms. How do you have an economy based on sandworms? Yeah. Anyway, they do. So like, I just want to write so many worm books and no one will let me.
I want to write so many worm books. I think that's I love that quote.
I think I would say actually basically every novel, litfic, realism, historical fiction, sci-fi, fantasy, horror, romance, every book benefits from having a giant worm in it.
Okay. I love that. Bold statements.
Yeah.
Bold statement.
Yes. I'm not retracting it. I think every book needs a sandworm of some kind. Yeah.
Love it. I love it. All right, 2 more real quick ones from the listeners. Current favorite pen or ink?
So I am using, what is this? The Monteverde Prima a lot. It is, however, a little bastard. The thing is, it's just got this very, very, okay, you can't see me, I'm playing with it right now. I've been using it for the last couple of weeks, particularly. It's got this very, very flexy nib, even though it is not actually marketed as a flex nib. It's just one of those ones that has a lot of spring to it, sort of on its own. I'm irritated because you can't really use sparkle ink in it. It is a lot of fun to write with, though. So if you are looking for an irritating but fun pen, the Monteverde Prima gets my vote at the moment. But, ask me again in a week when I am in love with another one of my pens, and the answer will be different.
Love that. Okay. Next question was asked by no fewer than 3 people. What is your favorite bug? Bugge. Bug.
My favorite bug, and of course they are spelling it correctly, my favorite bug continues, and there's always a lot of contenders, but it continues to be, I guess I would say, tiger beetles as a species. Alberta actually has quite a few. I did almost once fall into I'm going to call it a low area rather than a swamp, chasing after one because we were doing a species survey of the area and I wasn't paying attention. I just ran after it and they are very, very fast. And then I started to sink and I was like, this is probably how I die. I did not die. My coworker hauled me back out, but it took a while because I was actually too embarrassed to call for help for 20 minutes and I was trying to dig my way out and I was sinking. So you can't really dig your way out of sinking. And then, of course, both my boots ended up lost in the gloop.
Oh,
and I
God.
had to walk back to the truck in my socks, and I got mocked. Anyways, I love tiger beetles. I think they are so cool. They have a unique double tripod gait, so they run like no other beetle, basically. And they can also move so fast that they have to pause now and then for their brain to catch up to the optical information that's coming in. That's how fast they can move. I just think they're cool. And visually, they're quite cool. and one almost killed me once. Yeah.
That's crazy. That's awesome.
I know.
Well, you lived through the classic 90s kids TV show scenario of quicksand.
Yeah. It's funny how in the movies, they never mention that you might not call for help instantly. I stood there for a good minute. Oh, shoot. Let me just lift this leg. Oh, let me just lift this leg. Let me just,
Oh
and
my
the
gosh.
sounds were as the swamp ate me. And I was like, this is so embarrassing. I'm going to die. Also, if I don't call for help, I will die anyway. So maybe I should just call for help. But it did take a while. Oh, the embarrassment.
And to completely tie this back around, this also happened in an R.L. Stine Goosebumps book. So there you go.
Oh my God, that does not surprise me. Yeah, I was a lot more worried about quicksand in the 80s than I am now. Because I've never encountered it. I have almost died in more than one wetland, but I've never died in quicksand. So I don't know.
All right. Well, for all of you out there that were watching TV as kids in the 80s and 90s, you know.
But it does have to be out there because they got the idea from somewhere, didn't they?
You'd think.
Just because I happened to not see it while I was doing environmental consulting doesn't mean we don't have it. It just means I got lucky. I am pretty sure.
Was it in an Indiana Jones movie or something? I feel like it probably was.
Yeah. Okay. Let me think. Was it? Now I can't remember. It must have been.
I don't know either, but I feel like that would have been big enough to make that popular. I don't know.
I feel was quicksand not one of the hazards in the first movie where he's getting the golden idol? Oh, and I can't remember. Okay, well, we're gonna have to watch Indiana Jones now.
I guess so.
Yeah, because I can't remember at all.
Okay, well, we've been doing this for a while now, so it's almost time for me to let you go.
Yeah, and now that we've confirmed that both of us have terrible memories.
Oh, God, right? Horrible. Especially names. Forget it.
Yeah, especially names. Forget it. Yeah.
Absolutely horrible. We always have 3 questions that we ask to finish things out. 1 hard question and 2 easy questions.
Okay.
Well, I shouldn't say this is hard. It's not hard for everybody, but it's hard for a lot of people, especially now. What is bringing you hope right now?
Books, honestly. I don't know. At least when things are terrible, there are still books and I can still read them and still think, hey, there are still people out there with working brains. The whole world is not a certain way. Here's proof.
Yeah.
Like, here's proof that some people's brains still work, and it's in a book.
Yes, I feel this way a lot myself. So I get that. I get that feeling. What else are you working on that you would like to promote right now?
Oh, God, I just handed in 2 things. Neither of them have been announced, so I am not allowed to talk about them.
Mhm.
So it probably looks like I do not have anything coming out for the foreseeable future. Sorry, I hope people don't mind. I will announce when I can. 2 novels, though. So
All right.
at some point in the I have no idea when they are scheduled future, and a handful of short stories, including one I noticed that the Ancillary Review of Books was calling for reviews of, which is an Ursula K. Le Guin themed anthology called Revolution in the Heart. So
cool.
I have a story in that. So I hope people enjoy that antho.
Okay. Awesome. That sounds like something I might want to pick up. So I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, there's a lot of big names in that one. I am super, super excited to read that one.
Awesome. Last and easiest question. Where would you like people to find you online?
I also am in the process of refoobling my webpage. So technically you can find me and my stuff there. For right now, it will look very, very different in the new year. I hope, fingers crossed. I have a lot of stuff to look at and a lot of notes to give back to my web dev. So there, and also I am on Blue Sky a lot with my website handle, PremeeMohamed.com, and occasionally on Instagram at PremeeSaurus.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been greatly appreciated.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invite. This was super fun.
If This Goes On, Don't Panic is edited by and produced by Alan Bailey. Our theme music is by Father Flamethrower, additional music is by Christopher Snydrosky, and outro music by Sable Aradia. Intro by Dave Robinson. A special thanks to our guest, Premee Mohamed. Thanks for supporting us, and we'll see you again soon.